The alien reconnaissance flotilla had catalogued thousands of warships across the galaxy, but the object drifting before them barely qualified as one. It was alone, silent, and positioned at the edge of disputed space as if it had no concern for borders or consequences. Its hull was unadorned, no banners, no glowing conduits, no intimidation geometry. Just a massive slab of dark metal, matte and scarred, absorbing starlight instead of reflecting it. To the alien commanders, it looked unfinished. Crude. Human. They identified it quickly. A human military vessel, designation unknown. That alone sparked mild amusement across the command lattice. Humanity was young, fractured, and inefficient by every metric that mattered. Their technology worked, yes, but it lacked elegance. It lacked refinement. They fought loudly, emotionally, and wasted resources where better species relied on precision. This ship, isolated and far from human-controlled territory, was assumed to be either lost or abandoned. Standard passive scans began. The first anomaly appeared almost immediately. The ship's mass did not align with its visible dimensions. Initial readings suggested layers beneath the hull far denser than expected, but the scans failed to resolve clear boundaries. It was as if the vessel's structure resisted categorization, blurring distinctions between armor, framework, and internal volume. Analysts adjusted frequencies. The data only grew stranger. Thermal readings showed minimal variance. No heat leaks. No inefficiencies. A warship operating at that scale should have been bleeding energy into space, yet this one sat cold and contained, its power signature compressed inward with unnerving discipline. Even when the scan strength increased, the ship did not respond. No shields flared. No countermeasures deployed. It allowed itself to be observed. That silence unsettled some of the older tacticians. Electromagnetic probes swept across the hull and returned fragmented echoes, as though the material composition shifted at microscopic intervals. The hull was not a single alloy but a layered lattice of substances bonded together with deliberate redundancy. Remove one layer, and another would compensate. Damage one section, and stress would redistribute elsewhere. This was not designed for avoidance. It was designed to endure. Internal scans were authorized. The results triggered debate across the flotilla. Compartments overlapped in ways that defied conventional layout logic. Critical systems were not centralized but scattered, duplicated, and buried behind meters of material. There was no obvious command core, no singular engine cluster, no clean point of failure. The ship appeared inefficient on the surface, yet every inefficiency served a purpose. It was built to keep functioning even when parts of it no longer existed. One analyst flagged an irregularity deep within the vessel. Weapon housings, many of them, were oriented not only outward, but inward. This discovery was dismissed at first as a scanning artifact. When confirmed, the command lattice fell briefly silent. Internal weapon placement suggested a doctrine that anticipated boarding actions as a certainty rather than a risk. It implied the crew expected enemies inside the ship and planned to continue fighting anyway. Power readings deepened the concern. The reactor output remained low, stable, almost conservative. But predictive models showed a terrifying curve. The system was capable of exponential escalation, feeding energy into localized zones rather than broadcasting it outward. The ship did not glow with power. It hoarded it. Then the scan returned something unexpected. A response. Not a signal, not a transmission, but a subtle recalibration in the ship's internal systems. The human vessel adjusted its internal fields by fractions of a percent, as if acknowledging the intrusion. The realization spread quickly through the flotilla. The ship was aware it was being scanned. It had been aware from the beginning. Yet still, it did nothing. No alarms. No warnings. No movement. The warship remained motionless, patient, and unreadable, hanging in space like a deliberate pause in the universe. What had first appeared insignificant now felt measured, intentional. The silence was no longer empty. It was watchful. For the first time since encountering the object, the alien commander stopped assuming they were in control. The invasive scan penetrated deeper than any standard protocol had ever attempted, and the flotilla immediately began receiving data in volumes that overwhelmed their processors. Algorithms struggled to reconcile what they were seeing. The ship's internal structure refused categorization, not because it was chaotic, but because it was purposefully unpredictable. Layers of systems interwove with a complexity that suggested the designers had anticipated every conceivable method of analysis, and countered it all. Every compartment had redundancy, every subsystem duplicated or triplicate, but no two copies mirrored one another exactly. The ship was not merely built to survive damage, it was designed to adapt in real time. The power core was the first true revelation. Outwardly modest, it emitted a minimal signature, perfectly calibrated to avoid detection. Internally, energy flowed in discrete channels that could reallocate instantly in response to failures. Each module could operate independently, siphon power from another, or boost adjacent systems without triggering instability. Predictive models showed that if any section were breached or destroyed, the remaining structure could continue functioning at full capacity. Entire weapon grids could remain operational even after catastrophic hull penetration. The ship was a machine that assumed death as inevitable and prepared to thrive through it. The scan revealed the ship's intelligence was equally unconventional. No centralized AI core existed. Decision-making was distributed throughout the vessel, embedded in propulsion arrays, life support conduits, and weapons systems alike. The ship itself was a neural network. Each system could make tactical calculations, reroute tasks, and compensate for damage independently. Humans had created not a vessel but a self-aware battlefield organism. Every subsystem thought for itself while remaining coordinated with the whole. The realization made alien analysts falter. The ship did not merely respond to threats, it anticipated them. Weapons arrays challenged comprehension. While outward-facing cannons were standard, inward-facing turrets, reinforced corridors, and emergency micro-drone launchers indicated a doctrine that expected enemies to board and engage from the inside. The vessel was prepared to turn any incursion into a slaughter, defending not just the crew, but the ship itself as if it were alive. Aliens calculated that standard boarding protocols would fail. Even if they could bypass the outer hull, the interior was a labyrinth of traps, automated countermeasures, and lethal redundancies. Casualties inflicted would mean nothing to its overall combat effectiveness. The human vessel's internal layout hinted at doctrine and mindset. Compartments overlapped, corridors looped in ways that defied conventional military logic, and critical control nodes were hidden within layers of decoys. Every layer of redundancy, every internal weapon, every energy channel suggested a single philosophy: assume engagement is unavoidable, accept damage as constant, and survive regardless. Aliens realized this was not engineering for efficiency, but engineering for endurance at any cost. As scans continued, subtle changes in the vessel became apparent. Internal systems shifted energy loads and adjusted their electromagnetic fields, almost imperceptibly, in response to the scanning beams. The ship was analyzing the observers while remaining passive. The realization was chilling. Humans had anticipated observation itself, and had designed their ship to read and counteract scans without overt action. The flotilla's own instruments now became part of the human warship's operational calculations. Alien strategists began simulations, feeding the data into combat models. The results were catastrophic. Even a concentrated strike by the entire flotilla against the human vessel had a high probability of failure or unacceptable losses. The longer they studied it, the more impossible it became to define weakness. Every predicted point of failure either did not exist or was irrelevant. Every attempt to model human strategy ended with the same conclusion: the ship was designed to endure, adapt, and fight back in ways that defied conventional tactics. A subtle terror settled across the command network. This was no mere anomaly. This was a deliberate, conscious engineering philosophy. Humans expected conflict and built their systems around surviving it, not avoiding it. They did not hide, they did not retreat, and they did not rely on superior numbers. Instead, they embraced damage, prepared for loss, and emerged stronger from engagement. The aliens realized the unsettling truth. They were facing not just a warship, but a blueprint of human resilience and resolve, and the implications extended far beyond this single vessel. The more the aliens analyzed the human warship, the more its design revealed not just engineering brilliance, but philosophy. It became apparent that the vessel was not intended to impress or intimidate in the conventional sense. Every choice made in its construction spoke to a single principle: humans prepared for inevitability, not glory. Alien analysts could identify layers of structural strategy, internal weapon orientation, energy distribution, and redundant systems, but none of it aligned with the expectations of advanced warfare they had known. The ship was not a flagship, not a marvel designed to dominate. It was an ordinary human warship, and that realization was terrifying. Mission logs, partially decrypted despite alien technological superiority, offered cold, methodical insight. They were not filled with pride or propaganda. There were no boasts, no threats, no grandstanding. Entries were meticulous records of capacity, endurance, and risk assessment. Humans accepted loss as constant and factored it into every operation. They did not fear it, nor did they attempt to avoid it. They assumed that at some point, damage, chaos, and even casualties would occur, and they built their systems to endure these conditions without faltering. Aliens struggled to model this mindset. No other species structured vessels with the expectation of partial destruction from the outset. Internal architecture underscored the philosophy further. Control nodes were buried, duplicated, and connected in ways that appeared counterintuitive until analyzed in terms of redundancy and survivability. Corridors looped, compartments overlapped, and essential systems were shielded by layers of decoys. Every section could operate autonomously if separated from the whole. This was not inefficiency. It was resilience turned into design. Even if the ship were gutted, its remaining systems would continue fighting, coordinating, and surviving. Aliens began to realize the sheer scale of commitment humanity placed on endurance over efficiency. The vessel's weapons reinforced this doctrine. Turrets faced inward and outward, corridors contained lethal countermeasures, and secondary defense systems could neutralize boarding attempts before they reached core modules. The ship was designed to continue the fight regardless of the condition of its crew or outer defenses. Loss was assumed, and operational continuity was guaranteed. Unlike alien vessels, which relied on overwhelming power or precision strikes, this human ship required neither. Its purpose was not to conquer but to persist under impossible conditions. As simulations ran, the aliens confronted an uncomfortable truth. A human warship was not a singular tactical entity. It represented the philosophy of an entire species. Every redundant system, every layered hull, every adaptive network reflected the human approach to conflict. They anticipated danger, expected casualties, and built their lives and technology around the certainty of survival. There was no bluff, no posturing, no pretense. Their readiness was absolute, deliberate, and unapologetic. What had initially seemed like a lone anomaly was now understood as a distilled statement of human doctrine. The alien flotilla attempted to predict the human response to engagement. Simulations failed repeatedly. Their assumptions about fear, hesitation, and surrender no longer applied. The human ship's actions, or lack thereof, demonstrated confidence not born from superior weaponry, but from the certainty that their systems, their design, and their crews could endure whatever was thrown at them. It was a terrifying calculus. Even with overwhelming force, the outcome remained uncertain. Humans had removed vulnerability from the equation as much as possible. For the first time, alien command questioned its assumptions about power. Humanity had not sought to dominate, but they had mastered survival in ways alien species could not anticipate. Their engineering was an extension of their philosophy: accept inevitability, adapt relentlessly, and endure without pause. The warship was a reflection of the species itself, patient, calculated, and unyielding. The realization spread through the flotilla like a chill. They were not merely observing a machine, they were witnessing the embodiment of human resolve, and that understanding reframed every prediction, every strategy, and every expectation the aliens had held about conflict in the galaxy. The human warship made no sudden moves, yet its presence alone unsettled the alien flotilla. Then, without warning, a narrow-band transmission reached them, not a declaration of war, not a threat, not even a greeting. It was a single identifier and a navigational warning, precise and unemotional. The message carried an implicit assertion: humans were aware of the scan and did not consider the aliens an immediate threat. It was a calculated signal of confidence, a subtle demonstration of control, and it shattered centuries of alien assumptions about dominance and intimidation. The realization hit the command network hard. The ship was not reacting to them because it did not need to. Aliens ran simulations, feeding the transmission into every predictive model. Each calculation returned results that defied expectation. The vessel's apparent stillness masked a network capable of immediate, adaptive response. Even if the aliens fired a full salvo, the probability of crippling the ship outright remained marginal. Any attempt at interference risked activating defensive systems they could not see or anticipate. The human ship did not posture. It had prepared for engagement without signaling aggression, and that precision in restraint magnified the threat. The recalibration of internal systems became apparent almost imperceptibly. Weapons arrays shifted, power channels redistributed energy, and defensive protocols adjusted in response to the presence of external scans. The ship was simultaneously passive and fully operational, observing the observers and making tactical assessments without exposing a single vulnerability. Every analytical node aboard the alien vessels reported a singular, uncomfortable truth. Humans had engineered a warship that turned observation into a liability for the observer. The more the aliens watched, the more they revealed themselves to the humans. Debate erupted across the flotilla. Some argued for retreat, some insisted on further study, but no consensus could overcome the fundamental problem. The human ship was designed to endure, adapt, and respond with minimal input. It was built with the expectation that enemies would attempt to dominate it, board it, and destroy it. Nothing about its operation relied on overwhelming force, and everything relied on the certainty of survival and continued engagement. The alien commanders recognized that any decision to attack carried unacceptable uncertainty. Humanity had shifted the balance through design, doctrine, and sheer anticipation. Strategic recalculations began in earnest. Predictive models, fleet maneuvers, and battle simulations all now had to include the human ship's unique characteristics: distributed intelligence, adaptive energy systems, internal weapons coverage, and psychological conditioning that assumed loss as inevitable. The aliens realized that conventional deterrence would fail. Diplomacy, intimidation, or display of overwhelming power had no guaranteed effect. The warship embodied an entirely different approach: endurance and measured control. Humans had taken what the galaxy considered weakness, solitude, vulnerability, imperfection, and transformed it into a tactical advantage. The implications spread beyond immediate tactics. Alien commanders understood that a single human vessel could disrupt entire operational theaters. Fleets would hesitate, supply routes would be reconsidered, and contested space would be approached with caution. The warship's silence became a weapon in itself, a psychological force that reshaped decisions without firing a single shot. Humanity had weaponized patience, anticipation, and calculated risk into a form of quiet dominance that left no visible trace, but guaranteed effect. By the end of the analysis, the alien flotilla had reached a unanimous, unspoken conclusion. They were observing not a ship, but a manifestation of human strategy and philosophy, deliberate, resilient, and unyielding. The vessel had no need to display aggression because its very existence communicated capability and resolve. Humans had engineered a presence that commanded respect, enforced caution, and inspired fear, without acting violently, without declaring war, without a single flash of weapons. In that quiet, controlled observation, the aliens finally understood that they were no longer the arbiters of power. For the first time, they faced a species that did not bluff, did not hesitate, and did not fear confrontation. The alien flotilla withdrew without firing a single shot, each vessel silently calculating the cost of engagement, and realizing the risk far outweighed any potential gain. Records were sealed under multiple security protocols marked Existential Hazard, Humanity, and archived for analysis in fleets across the galaxy. What had begun as a routine scan became a profound lesson in species-level strategy. Rumors spread among alien civilizations. Lone human ships could force entire fleets to rethink maneuvers, redirect patrols, and abandon contested sectors. Humanity had done what no other species had managed. They had transformed mere existence into a tool of influence and deterrence. The consequences extended far beyond individual fleets. Alien command doctrines shifted fundamentally, introducing protocols to avoid unnecessary encounters with human vessels. Intelligence units were instructed to recognize not only the physical capabilities of human technology, but the philosophical framework behind it. Every analysis emphasized resilience over offense, anticipation over aggression, and endurance over conventional metrics of power. The human warship was no longer just a machine, it was a statement, a symbol of a species that prepared for inevitability rather than relying on strength or intimidation. Alien scholars debated the human approach for cycles of their time, attempting to understand how a species so young could engineer systems so effective under duress. Their simulations revealed that humans did not seek dominance in the traditional sense. They sought survival, adaptability, and the capacity to endure extremes. Yet survival alone was enough to command the attention of advanced civilizations. Fleets that might have once pursued expansion or tested borders now approached with caution, aware that a single human vessel represented the culmination of strategic foresight and engineering discipline. Humans had weaponized more than their technology. They had weaponized expectation and patience. By embracing inevitability, loss, conflict, and chaos, they removed the leverage of fear from others. Alien species accustomed to posturing, threats, and displays of overwhelming force were confronted with a species that refused to be intimidated, a species that built endurance into every aspect of design and doctrine. Humanity did not boast. Humanity did not threaten. Humanity simply existed, prepared for every eventuality, and that alone shifted the balance of power across sectors they had never even entered. Alien fleets adjusted routes, shifted patrols, and re-evaluated strategy based solely on reports of human presence. Even where no human vessels were directly observed, the potential of encountering one introduced a variable that could not be ignored. Humans had achieved dominance through restraint, resilience, and the refusal to act hastily. Their silence had become a tactical advantage, their patience a weapon, and their capacity to endure a force of deterrence that no calculation could entirely predict. The alien empire slowly internalized the unsettling realization: humanity was not overtly aggressive, but it was not irrelevant either. Humans did not seek conquest, yet they had engineered systems, strategies, and doctrines that ensured engagement would never be easy. Their philosophy was embedded in every hull, every internal mechanism, every redundant subsystem. One warship revealed the core truth about humanity: they anticipated loss, they accepted conflict, and they refused to be broken. Alien commanders could project force, deploy fleets, and simulate battles endlessly, yet the unpredictability inherent in human design meant no victory was guaranteed. The galaxy, in essence, had learned caution. Humans had rewritten the rules without firing a shot, without declaring war, without flaunting superiority. Their endurance became the measure of their influence, and every species that encountered reports of human ships recalculated strategies accordingly. The human vessel drifted through space, unremarkable in appearance but extraordinary in impact, a quiet testament to preparation, resilience, and philosophy translated into engineering. What began as a routine observation concluded with a galaxy-wide lesson: humanity does not need to dominate openly, because the galaxy has already learned not to test them. Through silence, calculation, and endurance, humans had imposed respect and caution across civilizations far older and more advanced. They had proven that subtlety, strategy, and a refusal to yield could achieve what brute force often could not. The warship was more than metal and circuitry. It was the embodiment of a species, a living declaration that humanity would survive, endure, and be feared, not for aggression, but for the certainty of its resilience. In that quiet certainty, The galaxy finally understood. Humans were a force that could not be ignored, a presence defined not by war, but by the unassailable will to endure.